Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and today I have Tomer with me. How's it going, Tomer?
Hey Seth, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. And we're going to be talking about the top 10 commander cards in Shadows Over Innistrad. So Tomer is kind of the commander guy. He does the budget commander articles. He's kind of the driving force behind Commander Clash on the site. So he's a perfect person to talk about these cards. So this is a list that is mostly Tomer made. I have some influence on it, but he was kind of the driving force behind this list. So this is kind of a special edition of our set review, and it's going to be kind of like the other ones. We're just going to go through the cards, talk about them a bit, and see maybe where they fit in Commander, what sweet synergies there are, or decks they fit in. So we're going to start off with 5 honorable mentions, which are either cards that just missed the list or cards that I wanted to hear Tomer's opinion on because I was curious about them as a less experienced commander player. So first off, we have Burn from Within. So Tomer, I've heard some people mention that this might be good for EDH because it can kill the Theros gods. What's your opinion on Burn from Within?
So my opinion on Burn from Within, I would say it's very circumstantial when you would want to be putting this into your deck. I think there's a very specific meta that you'd want, and I'm not even sure the meta would want to be for like Theros gods, because the problem with Theros gods is they're usually not even creatures. So for most of the time, you're not even going to be able to target the creature, the god, with Burn from Within. So that is a problem, number one, if you're trying to just counter like a Xenagos. If he's not a creature, then you can't actually remove him from the board, whereas stuff that exiles enchantments could. So I think that's the first issue with it. And the second issue is most of the creatures in Commander are just really, really big. So you're going to be spending 8, 9 mana to get rid of a big indestructible creature or just something that you don't want exiled. So it feels like just it's a lot of mana, and it just seems kind of inefficient, even in Commander. But what do you think, Seth?
Well, I'm not nearly as experienced in Commander as you, but in the games of Commander I've played, I haven't seen too many Blaze type effects being played. It just doesn't seem like a Commander playable effect necessarily. Usually you want things that have a wider impact on multiple creatures or some more flexibility. So I think that's a vote against it. On the other hand, the thing I do like that it can kill something that's indestructible, because that seems like something red doesn't really have access to very easily. So I think that's the upside. But as you said, like, you can't really pay 12 mana to kill a Blightsteel Colossus or something. That just sounds
Right.
ridiculous. So it might not see much play just because it doesn't have any good targets. Although it's probably worth keeping in mind if your playgroup happens to have a lot of small indestructible creatures running around. This could be something to consider. Or maybe there'll be some really powerful indestructible creatures printed in the future, and 10 years from now, Burn from Within would be something that actually matters in Commander. So I don't know. I guess that's my feeling on it. Is it's probably not playable, but I like that it gives red something it doesn't usually have access to.
Yeah, and I also think that just in terms of EDH in general, we don't see a lot of red removals that are targeted removal. We have lots of board wipes like Blasphemous Act and Chain Reaction, but we don't have a lot of playables that are just targeted burn. And the nice upside, not only just destroying indestructible creatures, but the exile effect, I think, is going to be even more pertinent just in general, because there's so much graveyard recursion in the format. Black has Animate Dead and Necromancy and all sorts of ways, but even White has Sun Titan and Rivalark and Karmic Guide. So getting rid of the creature exiling it permanently is a pretty sweet upside compared to Blaze. And I do like that it's flexible. Like you could top deck it late in the game and then just finish a person by burning him for 10 or something. So I think it's pretty good. I don't know if I'd be rushing it into any of my decks, but it is definitely something to keep in mind. Like you said, if we do see more indestructible creatures, this can come into play as a way of just countering that.
So as of right now, you're not going back through your red decks and finding a slot for burn from within.
No, but yeah, I'll probably pick up a copy or two if it does go into the bulk rare slot, and then just have it around because you never know. We could get like a 3/3 indestructible commander in the next set or an upcoming set that is just everywhere, and we red needs a way to deal with it, and that would be that way.
All right. Well, I think that makes sense. I think I agree with you. So our next honorable mention, we have a green flip card, Sage of Ancient Lore. So it's a green card that draws a card when it enters the battlefield, and when it flips around, it is not only huge because it has power and toughness equal to all the cards in all players' hands, but it also has vigilance and trample. So I know when I first met you, Tomer, and we were talking about Commander, you said you don't really like just big creatures that don't do anything more than just be big creatures.
That's true.
Where does this fit? Like, could you see this seeing play, even though it is kind of just a big creature at the end of the day?
You know, Seth, knowing my playstyle, I think you won me over when you said draw a card. I think after that, the rest is just yeah, okay. I'm so lenient after you can just draw a card and replace itself once you play the creature, and the fact that it's as big as the number of cards in all players' hands in a four-player game, I can expect it being like a 10/10 creature. And it could be even larger. It could be even like a 15/15, maybe an 18/18 creature. And it has trample, and it has vigilance, which is so important when you have possible three people attacking you at a time. It's really, really good just for 5 mana. And even if you lose it immediately, you still drew a card. So you're still not behind, and you still have gas in your hand. So this is definitely one of the best werewolves, and it makes me really excited to play the tribe.
I really like it too. I am also a sucker for drawing cards, and I don't know. I think that having trample and vigilance is a pretty big deal. Like that's one of the things you really want on your big green creatures. Like having a 10/10 or a 20/20, which this could be in Commander, is awesome, but a lot of times you're just going to get chumped by a token or some worthless like mana dork or something. So being able to actually force through that damage because of trample, I think makes it a lot more playable. It's kind of the green Muldrifter.
Yeah.
As a 5 mana evasive threat that draws a card when it enters the battlefield. Obviously, I don't. It's probably not as good as Muldrifter, but that's the first thing that came to mind when I saw this.
I mean, it is going to be a 15/15 vigilance trample sometimes, but on the other hand, it draws one less card than the flying fish. So it's close. It's close. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, speaking of drawing cards, our next honorable mention can potentially draw you a lot of cards. Asylum Visitor, kind of a weird Dark Confidant variant. If at the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, you draw a card and lose a life. So you can potentially draw 4 cards each time around the table if everyone is empty-handed. Can you play this, Tomer, or does this need a really specific, like, bottomless pit, make everyone discard their hand kind of deck to be good?
I think if you want to play this card, yeah, you're going to have to go pretty deep on it. But thankfully, it seems like the direction that Shadows Over Innistrad is going with vampires is they're tying it very closely to the madness mechanic. In fact, most of the good vampires you'll see in the set have madness on them, or at least trigger it in some way. So I think you can kind of merge a sort of like discard deck with this new style of vampires. And I think in those type of decks, Asylum Visitor is going to be very good. I can just imagine already playing like a Mind Slicer, where when you sacrifice it, each person discards their hands. You play the Mind Slicer, everybody discards their hands, and then you go up 4 cards over everybody else.
Ooh, that's a combo.
Yeah,
That's pretty sweet.
so I can see Asylum Visitor playing a really big role in new style vampire decks that are focused on discard, and just discard decks in general. I mean, it's just 2 mana. It has madness itself, and there's a lot of ways to make sure that everybody has no cards in hand.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool card, and I really like the Mindslaver combo. The thing that worries me is thinking to like our Commander Clash games. It is pretty rare for even one player to be hellbent and have no cards in hand, let alone everyone have no cards in hand. Just in like a normal game, if no player is intentionally trying to get people empty-handed. So I think that it's not a card you can really just jam in your black deck and hope to get value off of. It doesn't seem like that'll work very well. But I think you're right. If you build a deck around it, it could potentially be powerful. So I know that you, out of all Shadows of Innistrad, you're most excited about building a clue deck. But I've also picked up that you might be excited about a werewolf deck. So what do you think about Gaia Reach Bandit?
I think this is going to be a big player in Werewolf Tribal, and it's one of the big cards that are going to just make the deck work, because werewolves kind of have a disadvantage in that you have to rely on your opponents not casting spells, and you have to give up your potential plays of casting multiple spells each turn just to make them flip. And Gaia Reach Bandit gives you a shortcut to get them to flip and gets you to kind of cheat around that restriction. So it's going to be even more so than like the Sage, which is just a really good efficient beater. This is going to make sure that all your werewolves actually do what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm very excited for this card. I think this card and probably Immerwolf from the previous set, which stops werewolves and wolves from transforming back to human form. These type of cards are going to make werewolf viable as a deck and as a tribe.
Yeah, the Immerwolf synergy is very strong because really the flip side on most of the werewolves is where you want to be. It's so much more powerful than the front side almost all the time. And I also like that even if you don't happen to have your Immerwolf, you at least get a one-shot activation of that flip. So because a lot of the werewolves have abilities that even if you can just use them for one turn can be powerful, like giving your whole team double strike or being a 15-15 trample vigilance. So maybe you can kind of ball lightning them in and get the one shot with them, even if you don't have an Immerwolf to make sure that they stay transformed. So I'm pretty excited about this too. I'm sure lots of people will be building werewolves decks. The problem is, Tomer, where's the legendary werewolf? What are you using as your commander?
I know that is the question. I thought that they would put it in Shadows over Innistrad. I'm very confident that they'll bring it in Eldritch Moon, because I remember Mark Rosewater made a comment saying that it was a mistake not to have it in the previous set, and it's something they want to do. So my fingers are crossed for Eldritch Moon. It's kind of unfortunate that we didn't get it in this set, but if you recall, a lot of people were waiting for an Allies commander too, and we got it, General Tazri, but we only got it in Oath of the Gatewatch. We didn't get it in Battle for Zendikar, so I think that it's not like the sky is falling that we don't have it now. But in terms of what I'm running right now is I'm running Xenagos, God of Revels, red-green Theros God. He gives your creature haste and gives it it doubles its power and toughness when it comes into play. So it kind of works with the werewolf theme. I'm using it half because it gives me access to red and green, which is where all the werewolves are, and also because it's just a very powerful effect. But yeah, I can't wait until I can swap it out for an actual legendary werewolf.
Yeah, I too would be shocked if we didn't actually get a legendary werewolf. I think Marrow, as you said, made it pretty clear that that's got to happen, and they got to meet the players' expectations on this one. So we got to wait a couple more months, but I would be so shocked if we didn't get one by the end of the block.
Agree.
So one more honorable mention, and then we are on to the top 10. Last honorable mention, Second Harvest. 4-mana instant. It doubles all of the tokens you have on the battlefield. So what are you going to be doubling, Tomer?
Ooh. Well, there's a lot of cards that I like. But I was thinking mostly Decree of Justice. That's the one where you can either make angel tokens, or you can cycle it to make 1/1 soldier tokens. Basically, anything you double is going to be value, be it 4/4 angels or 1/1 tokens. It doesn't really matter. The point is, if you have 10 tokens and then you make 20 at the last end step before you turn, you untap with that much creatures, and then you cast something like an overrun or just pretty much any buff card, you're going to win the game. So Second Harvest, it's dependent on your board state, so it doesn't just make tokens on its own, but the blowout potential is so high. The fact that it's instant is what really, really clinches it. I can imagine it just being the step right before you win the game is when you cast Second Harvest, just to double up, and you go for lethal on your turn.
I'm disappointed that your answer wasn't clue tokens.
Clue tokens. Wait, is it just creature tokens?
No, it is tokens. It can copy any token.
Oh no, I missed the setup too.
Yes, so you can actually double up your clue tokens. I didn't realize that either till Chaz pointed it out to me when we were talking about this card.
I never noticed that. That makes the card even better. So you can have like a clue plus token sub-theme to get maximal value out of this.
Yeah, that is true. So I don't. It reminds me of, is it Raise the Redeemed? Is that the elf that can double tokens?
Yeah, it's Raise or Rise. Yeah, it's RYS. I don't even know how you.
Yeah, well, however you say it, but I have definitely played against that before, and it can get out of hand pretty quickly. Of course, it's different because it's repeatable, but still, like, even at one shot for 4 mana instant speed, this card seems very strong in token decks.
Yeah, the fact that it's a little bit situational, but the fact that it's instant and it's only 4 mana and it can do all tokens, which I know. Thank you, Seth, because that made it even better. The wheels are turning in my head now. I think this is going to be a staple for token decks, token creature decks, and token other decks, which will be left open-ended.
All right, anyway, those are the honorable mentions. We are on to our actual top 10. First off, the card I am most likely to say wrong, Triskaidekaphobia. So, Tomer, what do you think this card does in Commander?
To be honest, the reason why I put this on the top 10 is because I immediately thought of you, Seth. I wanted to hear what you wanted to do with it.
So I'm sure I will play this card because one of the things I love more than anything, not only in Against the Odds, but in Commander Clash, is trying to win with alternate win conditions. For some reason, I just can't get enough of that. That said, this one seems pretty hard to break. Getting people to exactly 13 life is a really odd and challenging number, especially in Commander when people start at 40 life. That's 27, exactly 27 life you have to somehow take away from each player. I guess the good news is it's a really odd, like, janky Curse of Pierceheart type card. Like,
so janky.
It does, like, drain everyone every turn, so maybe there's some way that would be playable. Like, so I don't know. So I'm sure I will try it, but I can't think of any easy way of breaking it in EDH.
So the only deck archetype that I can think of that could possibly break this card is one commander in particular. Her name is Selenia Dark Angel. She has she has an activated ability where you can pay 2 life to return her to your hand. What you can do is you could respond to that trigger by continuing to do that over and over again. So you can pay 2 life, and then before that ability resolves, you can pay 2 life again, and pay 2 life again, and again and again. So you can manipulate your own health total, at least. And, I mean, you won't be able to do it always at 13, but sometimes you might be able to. And then the best way, I think, is not to get everybody else's life total to 13 and yours at whatever. It's actually to get yours to 13 and then swap your health total with the opponent's. And that way they'll lose. And there's a bunch of really, really hideously janky, overpriced cards that do that. There's like Soul Conduit. It costs 6 mana, and then you pay 6 mana to make 2 target players exchange life totals. There's like a bunch of others. They're all like 8 mana, 10 mana, like Repay in Kind and stuff like that. But then the extra hurdle that you have to get through. So not only do you have to get to 13 life, give your opponents 13 life by swapping it, then you only win on your upkeep. So it's crazy.
I
But I can't wait.
I really want to build a life swap deck. I hadn't even thought about that, but that sounds pretty fun. Triskaidekaphobia would definitely be part of it. But even
Yeah.
just like waiting till someone's being attacked and they think they're fine, then out of nowhere you switch them to the lowest player's life total and they lose. That sounds
Yeah.
like a pretty sweet way to kill someone in Commander.
If you can give your stuff flash, then I can see this being an actual win condition that can kind of make sense, but it's still janky as hell. But yeah,
Well, you know I'm going to try it at some point. Like, we
I
will see Triskaidekaphobia and Commander clash. There's no doubt about it.
I know not only will you try it, you're going to win with it.
That's the only time I can win on Commander Clash is when I play some really janky, awful win condition like Biovisionary. Those are the
Oh.
only weeks I win, so. All right, number 9 up next. A far less janky card, Olivia Mobilized for War. So kind of the madness mythic from Shadows over Innistrad. Where do you see this one fitting in Commander, Tomer?
So I wanted to talk about Olivia mostly because I think she is going to be the best candidate for leading Vampire Tribal moving forward. There's a lot of really good vampire legendaries that are mono black, but Olivia is kind of unique in that she does give you access to red, which gives you just more vampires to play with. Um, I think she's a big step up from Olivia Valderon, the first version, just because I played with original Olivia, and I just found that her activated abilities, while strong, you can kind of turn people into vampires and then gain control of them. It costs a lot of mana, and the thing that I really like about Olivia Mobilized for War is she's just 3 mana. So if you build around her, you can expect to cast her many times in an EDH game. You can cast her at least 3 times, no problem. So now you can build around her, and when you build around her, you can really build around her discard effect, which is what Shadows over Innistrad vampires are all about. They're all about being discarded and then being played for their madness cost. So Olivia is now a discard outlet, and she gives your like utility creatures that are not vampires, she can make them vampires and also make them a little bit stronger and give them haste and everything. But she kind of like rounds out everything you want to be doing in a tribal vampire deck now. You want to make all your creatures vampires, which is what she does, and you want to have a discard outlet for your madness vampires, which she also does. So all of that plus just 3 mana, I'm sold. I think she's amazing.
So, well, I agree with you. I think she'll be very good in vampire decks and probably the best red-black vampire commander. I'm curious to hear your opinion on whether she can see play in non-vampire decks. Like outside of tribal, could you imagine using her in a reanimation strategy to discard cards? Or I don't even know if there's enough cards to build a true madness deck. Like, is she just a vampire card, or can she come in other places just because her abilities are unique and she can provide enough value?
I think I am skeptical that she's going to be anywhere else, unfortunately. I think she's great for Vampire Tribal, but the problem is her discard outlet is very situational. You can only do it whenever you cast a creature. So you're already spending mana to cast a creature, then you have to do something with the card that you discard usually. If it's a Madness card, you have to cast it immediately afterwards. If you're just trying to mill yourself or like put cards in the graveyard, then that's a different story. But I think, yeah, I think there's better discard outlets than Olivia in general. And if you're not taking advantage of the fact that she's a vampire, then I don't think. I think there's better options.
So pretty much vampires are bust for Olivia, but really good in vampires.
Yeah, she does everything you'd want for a vampire general, but if you're just going for a traditional discard deck, probably not. I could be wrong, and I'd love to see people play with her in that, but my immediate thoughts are I'm skeptical that she'll find a spot anywhere else.
All right, so number 8, this one I'm really curious about. What is the best Boros commander before Shadows over Innistrad? Boros seems like a weird color combination. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone play a Boros deck in all of our commander clashes.
Oh, well, Jake did, and then it didn't end up very well.
Oh, okay. That's predictable. Always Jake. So is Boros not a very popular color combination in Commander?
I don't know if it's unpopular, but I would say it's definitely the weakest Ravnica guild, or rather, just the weakest two color combination, because both colors have an overlap in weaknesses that you really don't want to be weakened in multiplayer, and that is card advantage. Both of them struggle with just drawing raw cards, and both of them also struggle in terms of tutors as well. They're very limited on what they can be pulling out from their deck. And in a format like EDH, where you have to take on usually three opponents, you really need to keep drawing more and more cards to keep up with your opponents, to deal with all these threats that are coming. And you also need tutor effects to deal with just the really wide variety of threats that will come on the board. It won't just be creatures that you have to deal with. It's going to be enchantments. It's going to be artifacts. It's going to be with just everything, really. So the fact that you don't have tutors, really good tutors in white, and you don't, or red, and you don't have really good card advantage, means that Boros is just, I would say, the weakest color of them all.
So
color combination.
So second question, does Archangel Avacyn change the Boros equation?
I don't think she fixes the weaknesses, but she lets you play differently that will be just better in terms of multiplayer. The problem with most Boros commanders is they're very aggressive. Like, I would say my favorite Boros commander before Avacyn would have been Iroas. He basically gives your creatures menace. I think it was before menace was a thing, though. But he encourages going wide, essentially. He wants you to go into the attack zone, attack with everything, go wide, and he gives you pseudo-evasion with menace. And that's great. You can dump your hand, you can do a good amount of damage, but then when you hit somebody does a Wrath of God, which inevitably happens like every 2 or 3 turns, you no longer have cards in your hand, and you're kind of like, oh, well, that's it. That was fun. So Archangel Avacyn, she provides you with a different way. She doesn't even care about the combat step. She doesn't want you to overcommit to the board or anything. And she actually helps you maintain your board state because she flashes in and gives all your creatures indestructible. So the fact that her play style is so different, and it focuses more on like mid-range and control and just getting the most value out of your cards, I think that makes Boros a lot better in a multiplayer situation.
Yeah, I think as a commander, she seems really insane just as a way to counter board wipes, because that's one of the unique aspects of commander is you always have access to your commander. So it's not like you have to draw it from your deck and happen to have it in your hand like you would in other formats. You can always just leave her sitting in your command zone, and she's always sitting there. And when all your opponents are getting their creatures wiped, and you can flash in a Avacyn and save your creatures, that's probably going to win you the game, or keep your opponent from wrathing at all, which allows you to keep your creatures. And one thing that white and red do have are pretty efficient creatures that can close out the game pretty quickly if they don't get wrathed away. So it seems like she fits pretty well into that strategy, and she'll probably see play in angel decks too, right? Is she good enough just to be played as an angel because she's powerful?
Oh, for sure. She's one of the best angels, so if you are playing an angel deck, you're definitely running her. I also think what you said, just even if they don't wrath the board because they know you have Archangel Avacyn in your command zone, I think, yeah, that's a huge win. You're making your opponents play differently when they want to be doing something else. They have to play like suboptimal options instead. So that's already a win. And also, I love the fact that her flip side is like this mini board wipe, but you can build off that as well. You can start building a deck just based on earthquake effects that just deal damage to all creatures, and then white brings in abilities that negate damage on your own creatures, and then red brings in abilities that double damage when you always deal damage. So you could do like Furnace of Wrath. Whenever a creature or a player takes damage, you deal double damage instead. And you could run Runetail, Kitsune Mystic, which blanks, prevents all damage being dealt to your creatures. So you could just have a deck just filled with control, board control, doing earthquake effects, flipping Avacyn to do like instead of 3 damage, 6 damage, while maintaining your board at all times. And then you could run blink effects. If somebody tries to destroy your board once Avacyn is flipped, you can flip her back and then save your board. So I think you're going to be eking out a lot of value with Archangel Avacyn decks, and it's going to really make up for the deficit of not drawing cards. She's not going to draw cards herself, but the fact that you're just doing so well with the cards that you do have in your board position, I think is going to make it really good for Boros control.
Yeah, I kind of want to go build Avacyn deck now. The way you described that sounds super sweet to be able to. I hadn't even thought about how white gives up protection spells, and the damage-based red sweepers can kind of be countered by the protection spells. So you can just keep wiping your opponent's board while you're keeping your creatures alive. That's a really cool idea for a deck. I really like it.
And then when your opponent rats, okay, he rats his board and everybody else's board, but then you blink, you do like Cloud Shift or something, and Archangel is blinked and comes immediately back and saves your board. And now you have like 20 power worth of creatures on the board while everybody has 0, and then you just win the game.
Yeah, that sounds like a very good plan. I really like that idea. So Avacyn is definitely sweet. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah, she's gonna show up in upcoming Commander Clash for sure.
So when I first started recording this video, the idea was we were gonna do it all in one sitting. But as we started going, me and Tomer really like to talk about these Commander cards, so it went longer than I thought it would. So today is the honorable mentions and cards 8, 9, and 10. And then tomorrow night, we'll have the second part of our top 10 Commander cards for Shadows Over Innistrad, which will count down the final 7, so the cards that we think are the best for Commander from Shadows Over Innistrad, so from 7 to number 1. Anyway, tune in tomorrow for parts 1 to 7, and thank you again for watching.